It's 1955, and we've started the year off with an Ahote 4 bumper rocket. This is going to be Flight B of the Ahote 4. How did you like that intro? I tried to do a little bit more cinematic. Every single intro, I'm going to try to do it differently, just to mix it up, you know? And here we are with the final spike on the top of the rocket. This is the XSR spike on top of our rockets. However, this is going to be probably close to the last of the Ahote 4s. It's just a little bit outdated now, and our technology is pushing forward, and we'll have something interesting and new by the end of this year. So here we come back in for the re-entry, and this rocket achieved approximately 1,700 kilometers. And what did y'all think of that beautiful cinematic that I set up of the Pazzola? It's quite interesting. I just wanted to try out some new camera moves. Check it out. And here we have Ernest Hall flying the Pazzola on its second mission. This is going to be the Redemption flight. Built from the same schematics as the previous plane. This one is going to actually make it to its 22-kilometer altitude goal, and we're going to make it back down safely this time. So you caught me here right at the tail end of the flight. We had reached our 22-kilometer goal, and we are now descending gently down towards the KSC. We learned a little bit from our last flight where we descended far too rapidly, so we're taking a very, very long trip down to descent. Our fuel comes very close, and we eventually run out of it just before we get to the KSC, which is unfortunate. But this plane is built extremely light. It is essentially a jet-powered super glider. So we'll see. This time you'll actually get to see a perfect landing of this plane with a good use of the balance. This plane has pretty good left to right roll balance, and it'll land on two wheels. Quite the feat. And here we are on final approach towards the KSC runway. the NACA runway actually. And here we are coming down. Our wheels should be extended here shortly as we prepare for landing. One thing that's really good about having these wide wings is that they give you quite a bit of balance if you have to balance on a two-wheel undercarriage. There we go, slowing down perfectly and then tipping over. Here we have the X-Jet 03. This is a new jet using the engine that we have on the Pazzola. That engine was able to allow the Pazzola to reach 22 kilometers in altitude and maintain a pretty high speed, sometimes even getting up to 0.8 Mach, which is pretty impressive for a high altitude glider. In light of this, we decided to test it on the Kawak airframe, and we added it to the bottom and added some drop tanks so that way we can get some more range out of the plane. And we managed to eclipse 400 meters per second. This was a test flight of the new X-Jet 3. And one of our contracts that we're required to do in this program is a low supersonic contract where we have to reach above 400 meters per second for 3 minutes. And I was testing the capabilities of this plane. Unfortunately, as we were coming down, one thing that we didn't realize would happen is the engine would overheat, and it blew up, unfortunately. And I ran out of speed and started to stall before I actually made it to the runway. So Stacy decided to try and ditch it in the water, and you can see how spectacularly poorly that went. Luckily, nobody was injured, but I think Stacy might be a bit shaken up. And here we are, another flight of the Ohote 2. It's going to be Flight D. And the goal of this mission is not to fulfill a contract, but to gather scientific data for our own scientists. One main goal of this mission is going to be to collect science from the upper atmosphere, and so that's what we intended to do. We crested our trajectory just below the outer edges of space, and we are going to fall slowly and gently back down to the surface from here. In this, we managed to get about 6 minutes of really good scientific data, and that will be taken to the lab to study further. And this studied growth patterns in the upper atmosphere, the amount of oxygen in the atmosphere, all that sort of stuff. And of course, here we are coming down under a ballistic trajectory, and our parachutes opened, and a normal descent is to follow. Here we are back with the X2. We've got the rockets under wing, and this time we are attempting to take the X2 up to 40 kilometers in altitude. We have just purchased the X2 cockpit from the scientific building, the research and development building, and we are now pushing that cockpit to its new altitude. previously we were unable to pass 30 kilometers, but now we are able to cross 30 kilometers, and you can see we made it above 40, and here we are dipping back down towards the Space Center. Still have that issue with the plume, something that I don't think will be fixed, at least during this series, because I'm hesitant to update my realism overhaul when I have a save ongoing. Could be a potential point of corruption there. And here we have Stacy Wood coming in for a landing. Another successful flight and another happy landing. Parachutes deploy, and we come to a full stop. And now we come to the flight of the Ahote 2AB. This is flight C. After last year's flights, we wanted to start gathering some more advanced biological data. I will say that one thing that we did get from this mission was that the advanced biological data experiment is not worth it unless you are in orbit. The amount of time that you spend is directly proportional to the amount of science that you get. So the experiment takes about 24 hours to fully complete, and it can only be done in space. And unfortunately, that means that no data can be gained from within the atmosphere, and the few minutes that I was above the atmosphere hardly resulted in any data at all. And the science to the science to payment made was not good. The expense ratio, science to expenses. So future flights of the Ahote 2AV were canceled, and we used the funds from those flights to fund new Ahote 2 and Ahote 3F missions. Here we are with the XJ3 attempting to complete our supersonic mission. We used air launch this time just to have us as high in the atmosphere as possible and not waste any of our fuel doing that. And we come very close, but I can't get it quite to the right speed here. So the mission is not going to be a success, but we are doing our best here in pushing this plane to its limits. At this time, Ernest Hall is trying to get the plane up a little bit higher, so that way there's less atmospheric drag on the airframe. And then at that point, we're going to dip into a shallow dive, about -2 meters per second in vertical speed. And we are going to ensure that the plane continues to increase its speed in this shallow dive. We did get very close, but we ran out of fuel very soon after this, and we were unable to complete the contract. And here we are, our new launch vehicle. This is the Ahote 100. This is a series of downrange rockets. This is the architecture that we will be taking to orbit. However, currently we only have access to the NA-75 110. Eventually, the first stage will be an LR-89 rocket engine, but right now we have only access to that little bit. And then the second stage right now is an early AJ-10 model of the Aerobee rocket engine. And above that, we have another Araby AJ-10. And then just above that, we have a small early solid rocket motor. This is going to attempt to beat our bumper rocket's downrange capabilities, and we're going to continue to go further and further downrange until we get to orbit. That's going to be one of our side programs going forward. What we want to do is we want to make sure that we accomplish as much science as possible. Unfortunately, the rocket did fail due to a staging error, and it fully staged all the way down to the final solid rocket motor when it was only supposed to trigger the AJ-10, the first AJ-10 stage. We were able to get some low space temperature and barometric readings and some low level mass spectrog. Oh my goodness. We got some mass data from our science units. Here we are with one of those follow-up Ahote 2 flights. This is flight E, and this is some more upper atmosphere scientific data that we're looking for. We're going to follow a very similar flight path from the last launch. Nothing much has changed. So this video here is largely an accounting of the launch as it occurred. Nothing new and nothing special quite going on. And of course, it performed nominally and descended under parachute. And here we have the third and final flight of this year of the XJ-3. We have Stacy Wood in the cockpit, his redemption flight, as it were, for the XJ-3, since he pushed it to the limit last time and blew up our engine. And here we are pushing the limits of what is possible. Going further and further and faster than anyone has gone before. Oh, I suppose Stacy has probably gone pretty fast before in the X planes. So this is the XJ series, not the X series. Something to be noted, actually, and I'm sure everybody kind of picked up on this, but the X plane series is divided into two categories. We have X jets and we have X rocket planes. A decision that I made to try and split up our two categories, since I knew there would be a lot of iteration between both series of planes. I didn't want for the X jets and the rocket planes to get confused. And I feel like each plane builds off of the successes and contributes to fixing the failures of the previous model. And I wanted to make sure that continuity between each aircraft was picked up on. The only one that's going to be different really from that whole series of aircraft plan is going to be the Pazzola XJ2, since it is such a interesting and different glider. But another happy landing. We do have an issue with drifting back and forth and yawing left and right. If anybody knows how to fix that, please comment. Here we have another one of the follow-up flights of the Ahote 2AB. This is the Ahote 3F. This is going to be the flight C. This is just going to be a simple Earth imaging mission. The Ahote 3F is a rocket that can go pretty far down range, and it can go pretty high up into the atmosphere and even into outer space. So we're going to try to push this rocket continuously to its limits to try and get as much data as possible out of it. Here we go, using Smart ASS to pitch over using a pitch program within the computer. And the mission is still largely a success. We are still using that A4 rocket engine on these early Ahote boosters. However, we have so much data on that engine and we have so much information regarding it, we don't want to make a huge switch up and utilize a different booster engine and then waste, say, 1,000, 2,000 funds on a failed mission because of the lack of engines, or the rate of engine failure, that is. And here is a new plane. We're coming up on the second to last flight of the year. This is the X3. Now this uses the XLR-25, an engine that was used on other X planes in real life. However, the XLR-25 is a much more powerful engine than the XLR-11. This one can actually push us, and we can continue to go gain speed even at such a high climb rate as you saw. And the purpose of this flight here is to crest that 55-kilometer altitude record. And one other thing that we've added to this plane, as you can see probably, is the nitrogen thrusters. We've added some RCS to control this plane in the upper atmosphere. As you can see, it's very it can lose a little bit of control when you're not moving very fast in the upper atmosphere. There's just not enough airflow over the wings to make those control surfaces useful. All of our RCS fuel was stored in a tank at the head of the aircraft, and this pushed our center mass pretty far forward. And due to this, we got a little bit better of a control. We have a better control over this aircraft since our elevons and our ailerons are now further and further from the center of mass and the center of lift. Here we are coming in for another happy landing. Same thing with the yawing. We keep experiencing that. I'm not sure why. And here we are with the last flight of the year. This is the Ahote 100, Flight B. This time we have a failure as well, but of course these flights are to make sure that we have those failures early on, make sure that we experience them while we're still not ready for orbit. Of course, our engines on our orbital craft, our orbital version of this, are going to be much better and much more reliable. But we want to try and test out the programming, the ascent guidance, and we want to make sure that that works pretty well before we move on to the next step in the program. So here we see an anomaly, something that I've struggled with in this program. And for some reason, even if you don't have crossfeed enable, Aerobee rockets drain fuel from one another across tanks. And oh, here's our failure. We had an engine failure, and the keen-eyed among you might have noticed what was up with that. Our engine failure was due to me not unlocking the helium in our third stage, because I tried to lock it up to make sure that the other Aerobee engine does not take it away. And here we are, descent back into the atmosphere. That time only getting mass spectroscopy results. And here we are in the final administrative work that we're going to be doing. Having unlocked basic rocketry, I have access to some new designers. And of course, I can only go with non-Soviet designers. So I picked Werner von Braun. His scientific research boost will help me continue to keep up with the pace that I want to meet. And here we are unlocking some technology. I am probably going to go for early science. There we go. Yeah, perfect. I went for solar panels and early science because one of our contracts here in the program that I'm currently in the light satellites is to have a solar powered satellite. So I want to try and think about that a little bit ahead of time, make sure that I'm on top of things. And we set up our contract programs building, administrative building for an upgrade, and we check our deadlines. And here we are moving into the end of the episode. I think this was probably our most successful year yet. We've tried a bunch of different things. We have new rockets in development. And if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. And I'll see y'all next time.